I got this yellow chair for my birthday, and it's now my most prized possession. I also got this harmonica from my friend Shane, and it sounds like this. Who made this? Hello, everyone, one and all. It's been a while, as usual. I don't think I really need to address it anymore, do I? My disappearances have just become the norm. Sometimes I even think they're part of my appeal. Does it make me seem cool and aloof? I'm not like other girls. I'm unpredictable and unreliable, and it only leaves you wanting more. My sense of unattainability only leaves you more curious. Welcome to my life. And my most notable trait. Ever since I started making videos on this channel in the year of our Lord 2011, my inconsistency has been, I think, maybe the main thing that people notice. It must seem like I just don't really care about making anything here, and to an extent, some of that is partly kind of true, but the reason I don't make videos here very often isn't anything to do with how much I enjoy it. I love the process of editing something together, even if it's just something really simple like telling a story. And I like sharing my life, of course I do, otherwise I never would have started in the first place. It was this stupid website and the friendships and relationships that I developed through it that made me into the person I am today. But my lack of organisation is not at all limited to whether or not I upload a video to youtube.com regularly. Nah, I am like this everywhere, all the time. And it's cost me a lot of money, a career, many qualifications. It's cost me jobs, really valuable friendships, once in a lifetime opportunities, and my physical and mental health. And that is just that I have severe ADHD. I know what you're thinking, but Kim, you're not an 8-year-old boy in an episode of Super Nanny. Am I not? We can't prove that. The fact is, most people do associate ADHD with children, and a range of about 3 symptoms, all of which are irritating, and all of which are no cause for concern, but a decent bit of discipline and a good slap. But little known fact, children are actually people. In fact, recent studies have shown that up to 100% of adults were at some point in their lives children, some of them even babies. But genuinely, studies do show that most children diagnosed with ADHD carry the condition on into adulthood. Those who did or have grown out of it, just like the rest of us, have just found better techniques to mask their symptoms as they've gotten older. The assumption that this is something that only affects children is due to the fact that originally we thought it was. ADHD started life in the early 1900s as an abnormal defect of moral control in children. In around the 50s it became hyperkinetic impulse disorder, but it was only recognised as the ADHD that we know today just over 25 years ago. And the proper identification of adult ADHD is still fairly new to medicine, which means that the general societal understanding of it is pretty shit. The problem with the public image of ADHD is that it's led by the symptoms of children. But children don't yet have the vocabulary to explain the variety of different ways in which their brains are affected by it. And even the symptoms that we list aren't really brain symptoms, they're just the results of them. Tantrums are not a medical symptom, nor is being late all the time. But both are caused by the same impairment in the brain. I am an adult, and I have spent the best part of like 10 years gradually learning everything that I can about my brain and trying to find adequate ways to explain it, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about it to the world. Medication hasn't really worked at all for me, and the services for particularly adult ADHD, particularly in the UK, are very limited, or in my case in South Wales, pretty much non-existent. Over the past few years I haven't really got better at tackling symptoms, but I have gotten better at explaining them, and I'm in a far better place than I ever would have been if it wasn't for the resources and explanations that I found online from other people. Because all my close friends and stuff said that their idea and understanding of ADHD before was completely wrong. Maybe yours is too. So ADHD, as most people know, stands for Attention Deficit and Hyperactivity Disorder. There are 3 main types within that. The mainly hyperactive type, primarily an attentive type, or a combined type, which is a combination of the 2. All of which are very badly named, because really there isn't actually a deficit of attention a lot of the time, just a deficit of the ability to regulate it. We also quite often come with hyperfocus pre-installed, which once you can learn to like trigger that on certain things, it can actually become quite easy to sit down and concentrate on something for a really long time. Attention issues aside, ADHD is widely considered to be a deficit of the executive functioning. And that is the thing that I think most people struggle with, most people I've known struggle with, and that is the thing that tears my life apart from within. Learning about executive dysfunction was like, my life just made sense suddenly. That's what I think would be really valuable for more people to understand. So executive functions are a set of cognitive abilities that manage a range of behaviours, including the ability to start and stop actions, the ability to self-monitor and change behaviours, and the ability to plan and follow through future plans. And this affects things big and small. It's pretty hard to get a big project finished and write an essay, sure, but it can also be pretty hard to like get out of bed. Depending on whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, sometimes I'm just stuck. The brain has this like filing system for every bit of stimulus and information that it receives, and it organises it all into like urgent stuff and not so urgent stuff, long-term stuff and short-term stuff. It's like when you're carrying a massive pile of laundry and you drop one annoying sock and you're like, should I try and bend down to pick up the sock and risk dropping other bits of laundry, or should I just go straight to the washing machine and come back when I'm done? Your brain assesses how important each aspect is, and then it analyses each option's risk and reward. And even the smallest of decisions like that rely on good executive functioning. It's like the daily living part of your brain just operates on this big flow chart. If X, then Y. If not, Z. And in me, that is broken. That whole system's broken. Remembering to renew my car insurance lives in the exact same place as what am I going to have for tea? I've got to reply to that text. Paying my council tax lives in the exact same place as buying milk and ordering that stock for work. And then weirdly also scratching that itch that's just appeared on my leg. And my brain can't process any link or lack of link between them. The doorbell's just gone. But it's rent day. There's no secretary. Everyone just keeps opening the office door and chucking all this paper at the boss, and the boss is like, what is this? I'm drowning in paperwork. And everyone's like, do your job. But the boss is trying their best, and despite being pretty useless in that situation, is just absolutely overworked and very underpaid. Aren't we all? I once saw someone online describe it as post-it note rain, and it is, with no colour coding system and an endless floor. And most of what falls down is completely forgotten. I explained it to a friend the other day like this. You sat watching TV, and your flatmate, they're like, man, I'm late. They rush out to work, but they're like, oh, can you put my mug in the sink? And you're like, yeah, sure. And then you carry on watching TV. The place that your brain has filed that instruction is where my brain files everything. Because you don't need to jump up and put the mug straight in the sink. Of course you don't. The TV show might finish, and then you can get up and take yours and their mug to the sink. Or maybe you'll be going to pee and you walk straight past the sink and you can grab your mug on your way then. But if everything lives in that sort of sometime part of the brain, then you're just sort of constantly waiting for a kickstart. On bad days, I can spend hours lying in bed just staring at the ceiling. But it's not the same as like a lack of motivation from depression or something. There's no depression attached to it. There's no real emotion attached to it. I'm just buffering. And occasionally in that situation, something will pop up like, hey, start by getting up and making a cup of tea. But even that requires so many steps that you normally aren't aware of. And without the ability to put those steps in order, I'm just stuck there, staring at the ceiling. Because now I'm thinking about putting the kettle on, but I'm not there yet. At that moment, my brain just hasn't given me any of the instructions I need. Because you don't start that process by putting the kettle on. You start that process by moving your arms and pushing yourself up to sit, shuffling to the edge of the bed, putting your legs over the edge of the bed. But all of those individual steps are just like stuck, floating about in post-it note rain. And in those situations, there is a part of me that's like aware of it. And it's like, okay, what's step one? But that part of the brain gives you like this weird discomfort. Kind of like, imagine there's a third flatmate. Flatmate 1 gets up and leaves you watching the telly, aware of the mug. And flatmate number 3 is there and they're like, aren't you gonna go put the mug in the sink? And you're like, yeah, I will. And then another 30 seconds passes and flatmate number 3 is like, the mug is still there. And you're like, I know, I'm gonna do it in a minute. Because that type of nagging for that type of task doesn't fit. It's not the right assessment of the priority of the task and the way that it'll slot into the day. And that kind of irritated, nagged feeling that you get from flatmate number 3 saying that is what the sensible part of my brain feels like. Just as it tries to put all the steps in the right order, it's like, I'm anxious. You put the mug in the sink then, flatmate number 3. Does that make sense? I mean, it doesn't. That's the problem, but I hope it offers insight. Because this inability to process tasks has plagued my entire life, and I didn't really understand it for so long. I've always, my entire life, been constantly making things, writing songs, making films, painting, singing, starting projects, but never, ever finishing them. When I was younger, and this is really common for people with ADHD, I was much better at it, because all of my mental energy was going on what I wanted to do. I had a million unfinished video ideas and scripts and drawings, but I had a million more that were finished. But now there's some post-it notes that can't be ignored, like bills and rent and work deadlines. And the little capacity I did have for sorting those things out is all used up. So I've spent the last 8-ish years just stopped. My brain's just full. This is the 5th place that I have lived in the last 5 years. So far, every time I've moved, I've like carted the same lump of mess with me. Because when I first moved out of my parents' place, I took all my belongings with me and I didn't really get rid of anything. 18 years of crap that had just been collecting dust and had been shoved into every shelf around me, but suddenly I didn't have anywhere to hide it. I had this massive suitcase which started off life as like a cute little memory box, and gradually it's just developed into this huge, out-of-hand, hoarding nightmare. But especially at times when I've been like working 2 jobs and barely had time to myself, it's just gotten worse and worse. And this is the most common complaint with people with ADHD. Our lives just become chaos. We're the messy husbands, the students not reaching their potential, the people who are hard to live with. In the last place I lived in, I left like a pan on the hob, a very meltable plastic fish slice in the pan, and the hob on overnight. Twice. And a lot of this stuff can seem very much like first world problems. But ADHD statistics are pretty consistent worldwide. And I think some of the complaints can seem kind of petty because, like I said, the things that we talk about aren't actual symptoms. But it can be really hard to hold down a job when you have a brain that doesn't accurately perceive time. I've quit jobs before I got fired and been threatened with disciplinary meetings from HR. These universal symptoms affect whichever environment you live in. And in my life, that affects paying bills and holding down jobs, because those are the things that are expected from me in the society I live in. But it's not just those things. Most worlds aren't built for us. Other symptoms include issues with sleep, issues with eating, issues with personal hygiene and self-care. People with ADHD have much higher statistics of addiction, divorce, homelessness, self-harm and suicide. The difference in our brains is measurable and real. We're more likely to commit crimes, to do drugs, to be in car accidents. We even have a lower life expectancy. I have all the exact same issues in my brain as the countless people my age in prisons because of theirs. A few different studies in the US have shown that between 25 and 40% of prison inmates have ADHD. This is like a huge international health crisis. And the reason people aren't being accurately diagnosed and effectively treated is because everyone everyone's focusing on the attention deficit, which, while important, won't display in the way people expect it to. When people get an ADHD diagnosis and something so simple is discovered to be the root cause of what they thought were just like horrible personality traits, people suffer this like huge grief for the life they could have lived if they'd been treated. I may not have gradually got worse grades in college and given up on the idea of university if I'd had the resources to work out how I can learn and concentrate and organise. I have the most understanding manager in the entire world. If it wasn't for that, I would have been fired from this job and several others ages ago and not been able to support myself. Learning to drive was something that was really important to me, but it took me 10 times longer than anyone else I knew because it combines everything that our brains find really, really difficult. Except it takes those things our brains can't do and it's like, now use them to not kill people. A couple of years back, I found a lump that could very well have been breast cancer. And despite my absolute best efforts to call the doctor and book an appointment, it took me 18 months. I could have died. The more vocal I've been about my ADHD and how I struggle with it, the more people I've been able to connect with and develop helpful, supportive relationships with. It's the symptoms we don't immediately know about that are the hardest to discover. I just thought I was a bit of a dick, but it turned out I had a hard time with sensory processing issues and intrusive thoughts, and I still do. The way that your brain functions affects your ability to eat and stay alive, but it also affects your ability to follow your dreams. It's like my thoughts are out of focus, like I'm looking at them through smoked glass or trying to think and like wading through water. It's so frustrating. But at the same time, all those recordings of songs that I've been making and lyrics that I've been writing down and shoving in a notebook or scrunching up and losing them in my pocket, saving to phones that I eventually smashed up and lost as well, they exist. People with ADHD are 300 times more likely to start their own business. That risk-taking behaviour can be used for good. I was on medication for a couple of years on and off, trying various things that didn't work for me and gave me weird side effects that I didn't like. But what it did do is highlight how my brain works to me. I used to have occasional really good days without all the background noise and the static. And I was like, oh my god, is this how everyone lives? Why isn't everyone doing everything all the time? I can't even imagine a world where I don't make it back to my car late and find a parking ticket. Where I answer my phone and reply to texts. I can't imagine living in a world where I don't suddenly run out of pants and have to do a quick wash and then dry them with a hairdryer before I rush out to be late for work. Just imagine postcards not taking over a year to send. There are like 8 postcards right there that have been there for 2 years? I'm at home now. But medication changed that in a completely different way. My thoughts are racing like all the time and they live like here, all around my head. And then the medication would kick in and they go like my thoughts were linear, something that had never happened before in my entire life. And it made me realise there is actually a creativity to the incessant buzzing in my head. I just haven't learned to organise it yet. Finally, in this place that we live in now, I've spent the last like 6 months solidly dedicating any time I have to pretty much just throwing everything out. I finally have enough money to buy shelves and boxes and things that are built for purpose to find efficient ways of storing things. And I even made a start on that suitcase. I opened it up, took 5 solid hours of organising stuff, thank you Hyperfocus, and I made a little tiny dent in about a quarter of it. It's a big job. I came away from it overwhelmed and kind of disheartened and upset because I've got like 6 hard drives, disorganised in the exact same way. Thousands and thousands of ideas in thousands of folders doing nothing. But it was a start. Progress is progress. The majority of you guys watching this know me. You know me. This is my life. I'm not lazy. I don't not care. I'm drowning all the time. But it's like I'm like 2 steps up the ladder now and I can finally see everyone over the mountains and mountains of to-do lists in my life. And the only way I'm going to get on top of things is just by filing them in like a random order. Just like shooting stuff out. And that's the plan, still, in every aspect of my life. Attempt number 253 of trying to get my life in gear and uploading stuff that I've been meaning to for ages. Because Past Kim has got some messages for the present. One of them's from China. Sorry, Evan. ADHD treatment in the UK isn't great. The NHS is in crisis! So all that a lot of us are left with is communicating with each other, providing advice and help and resources, and people online, on YouTube, have been a massive help for me. If nothing else, we just need the validation, and I thought maybe I could be that. I feel like now's a good time to tell you that I've been planning this video for about 3 or 4 years. I almost got it made in time for ADHD Awareness Month, which was October. Still, progress is progress.